One day, Lythe gets dominated in a mock battle against Sarah, his best friend, and when he complains about this, she reminds him that since they are training to become holy knights in the future, they need to work harder. In their world, once someone comes of age, the gods give them a class that determines what they become. Some years later, Lythe and Sarah arrive at the exam venue, and someone announces Duke Ride's arrival. Seeing this, Sarah notifies Lythe of his father's presence. As the holy knight who rules the region, the Duke strolls in with Kite, Lythe's younger half-brother. Suddenly, Kite gets called up for his test and is instructed to place his hand on a crystal, which would reveal his class symbol. So when he does, the crowd suddenly marvels at spotting the emerging emblem. Just then, it was announced that Kite is a holy knight, an extremely rare class that's attained by 1 in 1,000. After the crowd cheers, the Duke approaches Kite and acknowledges him as his son for the first time. Shocked by this, Kite wonders why the Duke's sudden change of attitude towards him and figures he's just using him for aura farming. Afterwards, Sarah was called up, and when she placed her hand on the crystal, it revealed the Holy Knight emblem, surprising Kite. After the crowd congratulates Sarah, Lythe gets called up, so he walks to the front, confident as ever. While Sarah wishes him good luck, the Duke warns him not to disappoint him. So Luke places his hand on the crystal, determined to force the hands of the gods. However, his determination is rewarded by a silent treatment from the gods. Since the gods decide to screw him royally by leaving him on read, the priest announces that Lythe's class is jobless. Later that day, a maid informs Lythe that he's being summoned by the Duke. On meeting him, his father disowns him and terminates his affiliation with the Wellesley household. After declaring Kite as the new eldest son of the family, the Duke evicts Lythe from the house. Meanwhile, somewhere in town, Sarah's family celebrates with her, and while they do, someone comments that they saw Lythe leave town. On hearing this, Sarah hurries off, making her family wonder if it's booze kicking in. While she searches around town for him, Lythe had already gotten himself a job as a cargo boy to get by. But since he hates the job, Lythe detests the gods for handing him cargo instead of a sword. Just when he thinks things can't get any worse one day, the horses get nervous, and one of the escorts points out that they need to proceed since it's dangerous in the forest. However, before he finishes, he gets surprised with an arrow to his forehead. Suddenly, bandits charge out of the forest, and the other escorts prepare to defend their carriage. However, they are all slain in seconds. After this, when the leader of the bandits orders his minions to end everyone, Lythe decides to prove he's not completely useless, but the bandits' leader makes him eat dust. The bandit boss then asks Lythe if he's a blade master, but when Lythe ignores the question, the bandit boss attacks. To his surprise, Lythe blocks the attack and cracks his sword in the process. So the bandit boss pulls him by the hand and slams him to the ground. After thrashing Lythe with many kicks and hits, the bandit boss points out that he's strong despite not being a blade master. Afterward, the bandit's boss stretches his blade at Lythe, who then thinks it's over for him. At that moment, Lythe suddenly takes his knife and tries to defend himself, but the bandit's boss knocks it off. So Lythe switches to using his hands, surprising his opponent, who then tries to dice him up. In that moment, Lythe feels frustrated for being too weak and suddenly hears a voice telling him he's obtained the skills Physique Boost and Blade Boost. After this, Lythe somehow manages to block the bandit's boss attack and cut through his throat. Seeing this, the other bandits charge towards Lythe, but he throws his sword and it stabs one of them in the head. When another attacks with a hammer, Lythe disarms him and bashes his head in. Surprised by this, Lythe wonders what just happened and suddenly senses someone rushing towards him. Just when he turns to look, the merchant's daughter jumps on him and tearfully says she was scared. Just then, the merchant chips in that they owe their lives to Lythe and asks if his class was an offensive one all along. Since Lythe is also clueless, he wonders how he managed to defeat the bandits and remembers when he punched the bandits' boss and heard the voice of a goddess. Despite being unsure of what happened, Lythe feels better for managing to save the merchant and his daughter. Afterwards, the merchant requests to have a word with Lythe and reveals that he'd like to repay him for saving them. When the merchant asks if there's anything he needs help with, Lythe reveals that he would like to know some things. The next day in town, Augustinus, the archbishop, gets notified of a man requesting a class reassessment, but he tells the messenger to pay him no mind. However, when the messenger states that the man bears a letter from one of his friends, Augustinus gets interested. Shortly afterward, he sits with Lythe and reads a letter, where he gets briefed on all that happened with Lythe and the bandits. After this, Augustinus comments that he hasn't seen his friend in decades, surprising Lythe that the merchant could be friends with an influential person like Augustinus. Just then, Augustinus asks if Lythe would like to be reassessed and points out that they normally don't do that. However, because it's a request from a friend, the Archbishop decides to make it happen. Not long after this, the testing device was set up, and Augustinus suggests that Lythe keep his expectations minimal. So Lythe places his hands on the bulb, hoping the crystal will give a correct verdict this time, but to his surprise, his class remains the same. On looking closer, Augustinus spots the emblems of Lythe's skills on the crystal and comments that it's shocking, since he's not even a blade master. In addition to this, Augustinus states that such skills can't be given to just anyone since they are all combat-oriented skills which can't be acquired by farmers or merchants. Surprised, Lythe asks Augustinus what his power is, but the Archbishop says he has no idea. After taking a sip from a cup, Augustinus tells Lythe to follow him. Some moments later, they arrive at the archive chambers, where Augustinus pulls out a book while explaining that there was someone in the past who also had no class, but had a hidden skill that gives them the ability to mimic their opponent's skill. After this, Augustinus figures his prediction must be right since Lythe got his skills after hitting the bandit, but since he had no way to confirm it, Augustinus tells Lythe that he'll have to discover everything on his own. When he leaves, Lythe feels good to have found out that there's someone else who had been in his shoes, so he strolled around town thinking of a way to know more about his power, and decides to become a knight. Chapter 5, shortly after, Lythe heads into a building where he enrolls for the required exam and is informed that it will be held in 2 days. Excited, Lythe thanks the receptionist and leaves, only to spot someone eating, so he salivates and gets himself a snack too. While he takes a tour around the imperial capital and observes that there are lots of strong-looking people, Lythe decides to practice until the day of the exam. Suddenly, Lit runs into an exhausted Sarah, who then calls his name while trying to catch her breath. Shocked to see her, Lythe panics and tries to get her to calm down since she looks murderous. However, to his surprise, Sarah runs up to him and hugs him so hard they both fall to the ground. After this, Sarah comments that she was worried about him and adds that she thought he might have taken his own life. Lythe then apologizes and suggests they get off the floor before they get sued for indecent exposure. A few moments later, Lythe apologizes to Sarah for leaving and ghosting her. When he reveals that he had to work as a cargo boy to earn some money, but was ambushed by bandits. After narrating his encounter with the bandits, Sarah points out that he must have gotten his skills from them and gets excited that her friend is not totally useless. So Sarah asks if he'll be taking the night exams, and Lythe confirms that he'll be there. Just then, Sarah shows him a boulder nearby and asks him to show her his skills by slashing through the boulder. Without hesitation, Lythe draws his sword and wonders if he could actually pull it off. Suddenly, Lit activates his physique boost skill and leaps so high that Sarah wonders if he's an undercover Kryptonian. He then raises his sword midair and activates his blade boost. On landing, Lythe manages to mark the boulder, and Sarah comments that his skills aren't so bad. After this, she adds that he should be able to pass the kite exam easily. Sarah then asks if he's seen what a Holy Knight's skill looks like, but he says her hasn't, so Sarah decides to show him. Suddenly, she attacks the boulder, and Lythe realizes his skill is nothing compared to hers. Just when he realizes he doesn't stand a chance against a Holy Knight opponent, Sarah tells him to stretch out his arm. Curious, he asks what she's up to. Sarah hits his arm, and he suddenly gets notified that he has received celestial boosts and blade. Just then, Sarah asks if he received any skills, and after he confirms that he did, Lythe asks if she's sure about giving him her skill. In response, Sarah says she is, since it doesn't decrease her powers, and hopes the skills help him with the exams. So Lythe thanks her as they stare at the devastating damage Sarah's powers caused. On the day of the exam, many applicants assemble at the imperial capital, and Roger, the training officer, observes them from a high point while thinking none of them looks promising. When he wonders if any of them has what it takes to become a knight, his assistant tells him not to look down on them since knighthood is one of the highest-ranking positions in the kingdom that only combat classes can have. After this, Roger heads down to address the applicants and introduces himself as the examiner of the night exam. After making them understand that no one cares about their ambitions, Roger adds that passing the exam helps them obtain a status equivalent to that of a baron. After giving his opening speech, Roger raises his fist and announces the commencement of the exams. Just when the assistant begins calling names, Lythe was called, and Roger's assistant points out that he has no class indication. While the examiners wonder if the data was mistakenly omitted from his form, Lythe raises his hands and points out that the form is accurate. Surprised, the examiner asks what he means, and Lythe explains that he has received his oracle, but wasn't given any class. The examiner then asks how he intends to fight, since it's required of knights to have offensive skills like those of blade masters and mages. When they ask Lythe if he's got a death wish, he responds by saying he should be fine since he can throw a punch or two. After they stared at Lythe like he was juggling dynamite sticks, Roger announced that things are about to get lit and suggested they allow Lythe to participate. Just then, one of the applicants named Logan steps out and comments that the standards of the knight exams have plummeted since even simpletons can take the exam. So Roger asks his assistant who the bum is, and she informs him that he's an aristocrat. Meanwhile, Logan announces that there's no way a weakling jobless like Lythe can become a knight. After he tells Lythe that staying in his lane will save him from getting a good smack, Lythe ignores his existence and asks the examiners if he can still participate in the exam. Annoyed by this, Logan screams, telling Lythe not to ignore him, but Lythe responds, saying he doesn't have any space left in his brain for irrelevant stuff. Infuriated by this, Logan draws his sword, drawing Lythe's attention. However, before he could slice up Lythe, he was stopped by Roger, who then pointed out that the exams had not started. While he glances at Lit, whom he had also stopped from drawing his sword, time stood for a bit as everyone wondered what would happen next. Lythe then apologizes to Roger, who then tells them to return to their places. As they head back, Logan calls Lythe and says he looks forward to their fight. Roger then laughs while telling Lythe he's made a new friend. Shortly after, Roger gets excited about the year's exam and considers Logan, who looks fairly capable but is too vain. He then checks out Lythe, who had caught him by surprise and managed to deal damage to his palm with his physique boost active. At this point, Roger realizes he's wrong and concludes that the year's applicants are promising. Afterwards, at the exam arena, when the applicants were assembled, Roger explained the rules of the exams and revealed that they would be graded based on their performance. However, he adds that since it's not a fight to the death, they'll be required to wear rings of divine protection that can form a barrier and block a certain amount of damage. After Roger announces that the applicant who succeeds in breaking their opponent's barrier wins. The exam begins and Lythe gets called for the first round. When he steps out, wondering why his name was called so soon, it is announced that he'll be fighting against Logan. Just then, Roger asks if they've equipped their divine protection rings and advises them to fight fair and square. As soon as Roger steps off the platform, Logan resumes running his mouth and approaches Lythe while speaking of how screwed he is. Suddenly, Roger announces the start of the exam, and Logan suddenly conjures a fire lance, surprising everyone to find out he's a mage. Just when Lythe remembers that Logan's family is known as the playground of mages, Logan hurls the fire lance at him, resulting in an explosion that makes even Roger marvel. However, to their surprise, Lythe puts it off with his sword. While the other watch in awe, Lythe approaches Logan and activates his Celestial Boost skill, which increases his strength, reflexes, and magic power. Although Lythe couldn't believe he defended the attack, he kept his cool. Just then, Logan points out that he's pretty good and wonders why a jobless guy like him could use skills. After this, Logan boasts that Lythe can't beat him since he has already mastered top-tier skills. After adding that he's a genius, Logan gets an idea and suddenly casts a spell, which makes many fire lances appear in the sky. He then boasts that Lythe can't block his attack and makes it rain fire on Lythe. Meanwhile, Roger sees this and thinks the ring of divine protection might fail to protect Lythe. Just as he was about to call off the match, Lythe activates his Celestial Blade skill and launches a counterattack, which hits Logan and breaks through the walls of the building. Shocked by this, Logan claims it's impossible since the Celestial Blade skill is a Holy Knight's skill. After this, he gets up, frustrated and wondering why his magic isn't working against the jobless Lythe. Suddenly, Logan tells Lythe not to get cocky and casts a spell while explaining that he's yet to unleash the best of his abilities. He then conjures a fire dragon, and while Roger watches, worried, Logan is trying to end Lythe for good. While Logan's fire dragon causes devastating damage to the platform, Logan announces that he's won the match, but to his dismay, Lythe bursts out of the flames with an explosive surge. Shocked, Logan fires off some fire lances, but Lythe blocks them with his sword and lands a devastating punch on Logan. As a result of this, Logan's protection ring breaks and he gets thrown into a wall, which then crumbles. Just then, Roger checks on Logan's unconscious body and announces that Lythe won the match. After the announcement, Lythe walks off the platform unscathed while the medics attend to Logan. Meanwhile, other applicants marvel at the sight of a jobless nobody taking down the first heir of a prestigious noble. Just then, Lythe gets notified that he has received all of Logan's skills. Worried, he turns round to check how his opponent is faring and realizes he couldn't control the impact of the skills since it's his first time. Since Logan could still express his displeasure, Lythe is relieved he didn't end the idiot. Meanwhile, Rajat gets excited to find out what lies ahead for Lythe and announces the commencement of the next match. Suddenly, Logan tells Roger to hold on and accuses Lythe of cheating during the match. Curious, Roger asks Logan what he means, and he explains that Lythe faked his class and hid his power to participate in the test. Suddenly, all attention shifts to Lythe, and Logan further explains that Lythe had the help of a real holy knight hiding somewhere and helping him from the shadows. When Logan suggests that Lythe be disqualified, Logan's friends say it's a far-fetched claim but agree with him. While the examiners wonder what to do with the match results, Princess Iris, the first princess of the Empire, steps out of the crowd, and everyone suddenly gets on their knees. Surprised, Lythe wonders why the princess is at the exam. Iris then points out that there has been no malpractice and confirms that although Lythe bears no class, he owns every one of the abilities he used. In addition, she points out that Logan, on the other hand, is the cheat. Hearing this, Logan feigns innocence, but Iris claims she has proof. Suddenly, she identifies Logan's friends who fortified his magic during the match, and when they try to deny it, Iris reveals that she has an appraisal skill and could see all their tricks. Afterwards, Logan and his friends were taken away by the knights while Logan protested. Iris then turns to the other and tells them to stand up. She then approaches Lythe and announces that he'll become a member of her royal guard. Some moments later, Lythe and Iris walk along a corridor, and she apologizes for her sudden intrusion. Just then, they arrive before Richard, the king of the Empire, and Iris announces that she has brought forth a newly appointed royal guard. Shocked to hear this, Lythe wonders why he's standing before King Richard. Some minutes before this, at the exam grounds, Iris had told the examiner that she plans to appoint Lythe as one of her royal guards, but Roger explained that it's unprecedented for a newcomer to be placed in the royal guard swiftly. When Iris asked if she couldn't take him with her, Roger further explained that there's an established order among knights which enables those who pass the knight exam to be bestowed the 9th rank. To make matters worse, Roger added that only those of the 7th rank or higher are legally permitted to serve in the royal guard. Hearing this, Iris asked if there was any law that prevented newcomers from receiving the 7th rank. Just when Roger stuttered and became speechless, Iris orders him to inform the personnel department about it and tells Lythe that she's counting on him. In response, Lythe promised not to let her down, so Iris revealed that she'd like to introduce him to someone. Back in the present, while Iris makes her case before the king, Lythe wonders why he looks so angry. When the king calls him and points out that Iris must have taken quite a liking to him, Lythe says he's humbled. Out of the blue, Iris then adds that she has chosen Lythe as her prospective husband, shocking Lythe, who then freaks out. Richard then rises from his throne and approaches Lythe. When Richard offers Lythe a handshake, he is relieved to know the king is cool with it. However, on shaking the king and sensing his aura, Lythe realizes he's wrong and figures it must be an overwhelming bloodlust. Suddenly, Lythe's head gets flooded with rumors he has heard of the king single-handedly defeating the enemy camp and taking down a dragon in one hit. Suddenly, Richard smiles at him, and like magic, all that vanished. So Lythe forces a smile while the king throws an arm around him and comments that he must have some incredible powers. In response, Lythe says he thought it was the end for him, and Richard states that his background doesn't matter if he bears true skills. In addition to this, Richard says he'll make Lythe a duke or son-in-law with his deeds, surprising Lythe to find out the king is a kind man. After this, Iris comments that they'll make a great couple, and Lythe tells her to quit joking around. Just then, Iris tells him to call her by her first name, but when Lythe hesitates, she tells him it's an order. When they leave, Lythe asks Iris where they're headed next, and she reveals that she's introducing him to the royal guards since he'll be serving under her command. When they arrive at a door, Iris halts and warns him that there might be someone among the royal guards who's after her life. Chapter 10. A few moments later, Iris calls the attention of the royal knights and introduces Lythe as the newest member of the royal guards. Just when Iris tries to introduce the mean-looking guards, Lythe introduces himself and says it's nice to meet them. However, the royal guards don't think it is, so Larg calls him a rookie and introduces himself as the heir to a duke's family. When asked who he's representing, Lythe says he's just a commoner, surprising Larg, who thinks he's joking. Larg then chips in that Lythe must be an outstanding hotshot if he made the royal knighthood as a commoner. Afterwards, Larg asks Lythe which knightly order he came from, but since he has no answers, Iris reveals that he was recently appointed as a knight. Suddenly, Lythe feels the atmosphere get tense around him while Larg asks if he ranked up to 7th during the tests. Without waiting for a response, Larg points out that it can't be accepted that he'll be promoted to the 7th without any meritorious deeds. When Larg asks who cleared him to be promoted, Iris walks up to him and says she did. She then asks if he has a problem with that, but Larg still wasn't satisfied, so Iris points out that he doubts Lythe's abilities and suggests they test him in a quick bout. While Lythe marvels at this, Larg jumps at the offer, saying he'd like to witness Lythe's strength. However, Urs, the captain of the Royal Guard, tells him to show respect to the princess and adds that he won't allow the duel. Despite this, Larg begs Urs to let him duel with Lythe, but Urs insists that he's injured and hasn't fully healed for a fight. Afterwards, Urs suggests that he'll fight Lythe instead and hands him a sword. Lythe then poses for a fight while the other worries he's about to be taken to the mill, since Urs is often viewed as a potential future Grandmaster of the Knightly Order. Ignoring this, Iris says she has confidence in Lythe, but is quietly worried about the duel with Urs. Just then, Urs states that no skills are allowed and adds that they should fight with their blades and protective rings only. When Lythe agrees to this, the duel begins, and Urs attacks Lythe, but he blocks the attack and realizes he's up against a tough opponent. He then decides to respond with speed, but to his surprise, Urs blocked each of his attacks, making him wonder why his blade feels heavy. Meanwhile, Urs realizes Lythe is strong and suddenly takes a slash at him. On blocking the attack, Lythe loses his balance and evades more attacks thrown his way by Urs. On realizing he can't contain the blows from Urs, Lythe boosts himself from a wall and decides to switch to a fence. Sensing this, Urs commends his judgment and decides he won't hold back either. Suddenly they clash, surprising everyone as Lythe's sword breaks and he falls to his knees before Urs. After this, Urs comments that Lythe's airborne time was too long and reveals that he was forced to use his special move. Just then, Urs picks up the broken sword and, on checking it, he admits to losing the match, surprising everyone in the room. He then explains that he thought he could handle Lythe's attacks at first, but since it was more than what he expected, he was forced to use his skill. After Urs admits to losing fair and square for using his skill, the royal guards are surprised. So, Urs taps Lythe on his back and comments that he's strong. When he adds that it'll be thrilling to watch him grow stronger, Lythe couldn't believe his ears. Urs then announces that he has been assigned a different duty, and reveals that Lythe will be in charge of the princess protection from that moment forward. The next day, while Lythe and some of the royal guards escort the princess on some diplomatic mission, he thinks about Ur's comment that with Lythe's strength, he's assured they'll be fine with just 3 guards. As they head out on the mission, Zack rides on Larg's shoulders and convinces him that it's training to get his muscles toned. Just then, Iris calls Lythe from her carriage window and reminds him of the assassination plot she told him about. She then explains that she got a night-exclusive information and is endangered because of it. Iris then reveals that she's lost trust in the Knightly Order's personnel department and guesses the assassin must be a pawn of Camilla, the second princess. After this, Iris informs Lythe that she needed someone on her side and brought him in. Suddenly, Larg collapses and Zack calls on Lythe to replace him in the training, so as he leaves, Iris tells Lythe that she's got more information for him and tells him to visit her room at night. Later at night, Lythe crashes into his bed, feeling pains all over his body, but for the chance of tasting the princess's juices, he heads out looking for her room. Suddenly, someone pulls him into a room and buries his head into the valley between her milk mountains. When Lythe realizes it's Iris, she asks if they should spend the night together and straddles him. Before the virgin boy calls out for help, she orders him to keep it down. Just when things were about to get raunchy, they were interrupted by bangs on the door. Iris then points to her wardrobe while Lythe gets in. Meanwhile, Zack stands outside the door and asks Iris if something is up, but Iris responds, saying nothing is up. So he announces that he has some urgent news and asks if he can go in. On entering the room, Iris asks Zack why he's in her room late at night, and he reveals that he received word from Larg, who was patrolling outside, that a band of thieves was on their way to raid the place. He then says he must evacuate her to somewhere safe. While Iris prepares for this, Zack silently draws his sword to end the princess, but Lythe suddenly gets out of hiding and stops him. When Lythe accuses him of treason and asks why he's pointing his sword at the princess, Zack says he'll wipe out both of them and leave no traces of evidence. Suddenly, Zack shoots a stone lance at them, and just when it almost hits Iris, Lythe pulls her out of the way and blocks the attack. Seconds later, Zack activates his stone hand magic, which tries to grab Lythe and Iris with some giant stone hands that suddenly appear, but Lythe pushes Iris out of the grip. Zack then approaches Lythe and points out that he's not as impressive as they made him seem. He then punches him in the face and ties Iris' hands with some earthbending skill. He then announces that he'll frame Lythe for the princess's assassination after he ends them both. Suddenly, Lythe tells Zack to die, and he hits him lightly on the cheek. In response, Zack commends his lame effort and comments that he wasn't ticked by the punch. Suddenly, Lythe gets notified that he has obtained the stone lance and stone hand skills, so he breaks free from the stone grip and summons the stone hand to grab Zack. Shocked by this, Zack freaks out while Lythe grabs him by the neck and uses the fire lance on him. After Zack gets roasted, his remains fall into a hole in the ground. Iris then asks Lythe about the wound on his face, but he says it's okay. So Iris commends him and resumes their unfinished business while Urs eavesdrops and smiles somewhere nearby. Meanwhile, back in Lythe's hometown, a butler informs Duke Ride that he's got some news about Lythe. While Ride sips from his cup, the butler reveals that Lythe has been appointed as a member of the Royal Guard, surprising Ride. After this, the butler explains that Lythe aced the night exams and was immediately promoted to a 7th. Suddenly, Ride hurls his glass at a nearby table in a fit of rage and says it must be some mistake, since Lythe is an incompetent fool with no class. Rattled by fear, the butler adds that Lythe used some Holy Knight skills during the exam, and he was spotted by the princess, who then promoted him. Shocked, Ride questions this and grabs the butler for answers. But since the butler is also clueless, Ride asks him if Kite is aware, and the butler confirms this. Meanwhile, while some goblins hold a get-together, Kite shows up in their home and makes heads fall while apologizing for crashing their little party. Without wasting time, he gets to work breaking goblin teeth and bones just for the fun of it. While practicing his offensive skills on the goblins, Kite wonders how Lythe could use a Holy Knight's skill and concludes he must have cheated somehow. While he spills more goblin blood, he realizes Lythe's already a 7th while he's still stuck as a 9th, the lowest rank. Suddenly, a giant goblin shows up, but Kite is too busy comparing himself with Lythe to care. However, when he spots the beast, Kite takes off its arm in one swift move and takes down the giant goblin by activating his Celestial Blade skill. After taking out countless goblins to quell his anger, Kite sits on a huge heap of goblin corpses. So Ride approaches him and tells him not to panic since the news of Lythe becoming a 7th must be a ruse. Ride then informs Kite that there's a tournament coming up where he'll get a chance to be a 7th. After explaining that it's an exclusive tournament for knights with less than 3 years of experience, Ride advises Kite to win and seize the 7th rank. Afterwards, when Ride reveals that he owes his 7th rank to the competition, Kite hops off the heap and announces that there's no way he'll lose since he's a holy knight. Back in Iris's room, Urs shows up and asks Iris if she's all right. In response, Iris says she's fine while Lythe stands, grateful he didn't go all the way. After catching his breath, Lythe asks Urs why he's there, and Urs reveals that he has been standing watch around the princess the whole time to catch the assassin off guard. Urs then adds that he deliberately kept the guards to a minimum while watching, but refused to appear since Lythe single-handedly took care of it. Urs then further explains that he had noticed Zack acting sus before. Hearing this, Lythe asks why there's a reckless group plotting Iris's assassination. In response, Urs reveals that it's likely one of Camilla's schemes to seize the throne. While Lythe figures Camilla must be Iris's younger half-sister, Iris informs him that a duel tournament is starting soon and many of the kingdom's celebrities will be attending. Iris then adds that she has a hunch Camilla will be there too, but Lythe was lost thinking the royal family is complicated. When Iris then asks if he's listening, Lythe resets as she asks him to show them his strength and make them realize they cannot be crossed carelessly. On the day of the tournament, the capital was buzzing with life as people chattered and moved around. Just then, the civilians spot the central knightly order approaching and can't hide their awe. While Sarah and her comrades enjoy the attention, she hears someone call her name in the crowd, and on looking, she realizes it's Lythe standing with Iris. When Iris recognizes Sarah, Lythe is surprised, so he asks how she knows Sarah, and Iris reveals that she once thought of recruiting Sarah. Surprised, Sarah asks how Iris knows Lythe, and she flaunts him as her personally appointed royal guard. Sarah then stares in disbelief, while Lythe feels embarrassed and thanks Sarah for sharing her power with him. When Lythe adds that he wouldn't have made it if it weren't for Sarah, Sarah blushes so hard, Iris notices and asks if she has feelings for Lythe. Suddenly, Sarah freaks out and tries to deny it, but Iris sees through her drama. While Lythe stares at them cluelessly, Iris announces that they're rivals, shocking Sarah. However, Iris tells Sarah to win the tournament and join the royal guard so that she can work beside Lit. While Sarah considers this, they suddenly hear someone raise an alarm about a thief. Just then, the people flee, screaming it's a thief with ice-based skills. Just then, Iris points out that they must prioritize citizens' safety and orders the knights to go after the thief. When they arrive at the scene, they find a levitating idiot carrying a huge ball of ice in the sky and threatening to loot after thrashing the townfolk. Suddenly, a hooded dude shows up and says he spies a big, lousy fly in the air. While more people flee the scene, Lythe and Sarah wonder who the dude is, while the budget Sub-Zero decides to start with the hooded dude. Within seconds, the dude raises his hand and an explosion rocks the skies while everyone takes cover. Shocked, Lythe wonders what kind of attack that was since the enemy was neutralized in the blink of an eye. Disappointed, the hooded dude says he thought he'd be more entertained and turns to leave. Lythe then asks Iris if she knows the dude, and she reveals that he's Julius, a sage of the East Kitely Order. The Lawrence Empire is a nation protected by elite knights renowned for their combat prowess, and as always, geniuses from across the nation have gathered for the tournament. So, at the dueling tourney, Melis, the event anchor, mounts the stage while the crowd goes into a frenzy. After addressing the audience and giving her opening speech, she announces that the winner will be granted the 7th title. After this, Melia decides to introduce the heroes, who are the guardians of the nation. Amidst the crowd cheering, Melis states that these heroes protect the peace of the country, and they set a standard for the new knights. Just then, she introduces Leona, the captain of the Central Knight Order, and the crowd chants her name. Hearing this, someone sitting next to Leona comments that she's popular as ever. Some moments later, he gets introduced as Radner, the captain of the Western Knight Order. While he chats with Leona, Radner asks if she wants to bet on who will last till the end of the tournament, but she ignores him. Just when Ralph joins them and asks to be counted in on the bet, Melis introduces him as the captain of the Eastern Knight Order, who annihilated every monster in the Netherlands. Ignoring this, Ralph says he's placing his bet on the newcomers from his Knight Order. Afterwards, Melis introduces Iris, and the crowd went wild with excitement to see her milk cannons. While some gooners in the crowd get fixated on them and compliment her, Ride and Kite wonder why Lythe isn't guarding Iris. Just then, Melis decides to introduce the first battle's contender and calls out a warrior from the Western Knights named Morris. As he steps into the arena with his shield and hammer, the crowd cheers in excitement. At the same time, Radner comments that Morris is a promising newcomer who has proven himself in battle and won't be defeated easily, regardless of the opponent. A few moments later, Melis introduces Morris's opponent as a warrior bestowed with divine powers. Suddenly, the door opens, and as Sarah heads into the arena, Lythe tells her not to lose. Melis then introduces her as a holy knight and rising star of the Central Knights. When Sarah made her appearance, the crowd cheered, so Melis called the contestants forward and told them the rules. Shortly after, the priest casts a protective barrier around the arena, and Melis announces the beginning of the first round. So, Sarah poses for a fight, and Morris approaches in his ironclad armor. Some years ago, in a small village between the Lawrence Empire and Novelturna, Morris lived peacefully with the cattle until one day when a blood tiger attacked the village and feasted on the cattle. While the people fled, wondering when the knightly order would arrive, the blood tiger went after the people, and just as it was about to take off someone's head, Morris got into its jaws and told the people to run. While the people fled, Morris battled with the jaws of the blood tiger. Luckily for him, a knight arrived on time and took down the beast in one shot. Exhausted, Morris fell into the hands of the knight, who then commended him and asked for his name. When Morris introduces himself, Radner thanks him for protecting the people in place of the knightly order. Since then, Morris has wanted to become strong like Rigel, so he went on a warrior's pilgrimage and joined the Knight Order. Back in the present, he also decides to come out on top in the dueling tourney, so Sarah attacks him, but he blocks her attacks. As the duel went on, Sarah activated her Celestial Boost skill and attacked Morris with her sword, but he blocked it with his shield, reinforced with a Steel Citadel skill. Sensing that he's off balance, Sarah gets a chance and decides to use it, but to her surprise, Morris has more skills under his armor, so she backflips to get away from him. When she lands, they both observe each other for a bit, and the crowd watches in anticipation while Melis comments that the contestants seem to be evenly matched. In the stands, Ralph comments that Morris's hammer is quite difficult to wield and commends him for standing toe-to-toe against a holy knight. In response, Rigel says it's because he has significant combat experience. In addition to this, Rigel explains that Morris has never backed down from a monster since he was assigned to the knightly order. Meanwhile, some people from the audience comment that Sarah is amazing since she has only just joined the order too. Hearing this, Julius keeps fiddling with his Rubik's Cube while thinking the match is getting exciting. In the arena, Morris suddenly stretches his hammer and calls Sarah, who then states that he's rude. When she tells Morris her name, he responds by saying he likes her and asks if she'll go out with him. Sarah then stares at him, dumbfounded by his whack timing and Riz game, so Morris confesses that he fell for her during the fight. Seeing this, Rigel points out that Morris is quick to fall in love since there are only guys in the knightly order. While Lythe watches, bewildered, Sarah says she'll give him an answer after the match, but adds that she won't be going easy on him. In response, Morris says it's exactly what he wants. Some moments later, Morris stomps the ground and creates a mini-earthquake, shifting the ground beneath Sarah and making her drop to her knees. While Melis hypes Morris for this, he approaches Sarah, who was struggling to get back on her feet, but for some reason couldn't. So Morris tells her to run if she can and prepares to land his final blow, but Sarah stabs her sword into the ground and leaps off the floor to dodge the attack. To everyone's surprise, Sarah flips in the air and launches a counterattack on Morris by kicking his neck. However, in a split second, Morris blocks the attack and gets commended by Sarah, who then picks back her sword. In response, Morris says he can block any attacks with his shield and commends Sarah's skills too. However, Sarah says all she has to do is break his shield, so Morris dares her to. Suddenly, Sarah dashed towards Morris and launched a barrage of attacks, which Morris blocked with his shield. Some years ago, Sarah hurt her hand while hanging out with Dulles, her father, who was a blacksmith. After telling her to be more careful, he tended to the injury and bandaged her hand. Sarah then asks Dulles how he breaks stones with just a strike of his hammer. So Dulles tells her to watch closely as he shows her a stone and tells her to feel the stone first. He then tells her to find the softest spot and strike it hard to make it break easily. After thinking for a while, Sarah asks what can be done if she can't find the spot, and Dulles explains that in that case, she has to keep striking the same spot. In the arena, Sarah put this principle to use and managed to crack Morris's shield. Afterwards, she decides to aim for the crack and strike with all her might. So she activates her Celestial Blade skill and attacks Morris, so he cluelessly uses the shield, and Sarah hits the crack. Immediately, the shield shatters in his hands, surprising Morris and Rigel. From the stands, Ralph comments that the sturdy shield shouldn't have yielded to Sarah's attack, but did because she must have hit the same spot with precision. Impressed, Iris comments that Sarah's skills are impressive and expresses her wish for her to join the Royal Knightly Order. Just then, Morris takes off what's left of the shield and says that he always knew he liked Sarah for a reason. When he comments that it's his first time seeing something like that, Morris announces that the real battle is about to begin. While the audience watches in amazement, Sarah suddenly sheathes her sword, making everyone wonder how she intends to face Morris without it. Morris then attacks her, but Sarah's attack hits him and shatters his shield into pieces. In retaliation, Morris launches a devastating attack, which Sarah skillfully dodges. However, Morris refuses to back down as he tries to nail her with his hammer, but Sarah evades his attacks. From the stands, Rigel notices that Morris is losing his temper while Ralph wonders if it's because his shield was destroyed. In response, Rigel says it's because Sarah is fighting with her sword unsheathed. After this, Rigel senses Sarah trying to provoke him and wishes he could keep his cool. However, Morris attacks while Sarah keeps playing with him, so he gets furious and tells her to draw her sword. After this, he asks if she's mocking him, and Sarah sneakily slips her sword into his hammer and turns it around. Unbalanced by this, Morris spins and falls to the ground to the surprise of everyone, while Sarah gets on top of him and puts her unsheathed sword to his neck. When Morris realizes he lost, Sarah smiles and says the sword is unsheathed as he wished. Meanwhile, the crowd cheers, and Melis announces that Sarah emerged victorious in the first round of the duel. In the stands, Rigel faces Leona and comments that Sarah's strategy was truly impressive and carefully thought out. When he adds that she could have been seriously injured if her tactic had been unsuccessful, Rigel asks Leona if she recognized Sarah's talent when she first joined the Central Knightly Order. With a smug look, Leona responds, saying that Sarah joined solely because she was a holy knight. At the same time, as Sarah walks off the arena and Morris asks her to respond to his confession. Hearing this, Sarah gets tense and trembles. Morrick then asks if she has forgotten, but Sarah says she didn't and apologizes. In response, Morris asks if he's not strong enough for her, but Sarah says she already has someone she likes. Hearing this, Morris breaks down while the commentators have fun roasting him for losing the match and the love of his life. Shortly after, Sarah meets with Lythe and asks if he saw her win the duel, but she suddenly spots some men approaching them from the dark, asking why Lythe is there. When they get closer, Lythe realizes it's Kite and Ride, who then asks again why he's there. Meanwhile, the crowd keeps cheering, waiting for more exciting battles, while Melis tells the crowd to wait for the next match while the arena undergoes maintenance. Somewhere else, Ride asks Lythe for some answers and screams at him when he can't provide any. Sensing the looming danger, Sarah steps in and explains that since Lythe passed the night exams and joined the Royal Guards, he was assigned to guard the princess. However, Kite shut her up by calling her an outsider and stating that she shouldn't interfere. In addition, Kite says that Sarah Shore can blabber for someone who knows nothing. After this, he explains that Lythe lived a luxurious life and was proclaimed jobless by the Oracle. Because of this, Kite states that he was chosen as the successor to the dukedom, and adds that he has Lythe to thank for that. Sarah then spots Kite clenching his fists and asks what he's trying to do. Suddenly, Kite tries to slap her while saying she shouldn't get cocky because she won once, but Lythe blocks his arm, and Kite realizes he can't move it. Lythe then smacks his hand and gives him a warning stare. Facing Lythe explains that he failed to receive any class from the gods and couldn't meet his expectations. He then apologizes for ruining his reputation and reveals that he awakened a skill after leaving home and passed the night exam based on merit. Lit then points out that the heir to the Wellesley family should be Kite, and adds that it's only right for him to be expelled from the family, since being jobless is unacceptable. Suddenly, Ride blows open a hole in the wall and tells Lythe to leave immediately since he doesn't belong there. Just then, Iris arrives on the scene and comments that it's not true. Seeing the princess, Ride and Lythe get on their knees to acknowledge her, and she tells them to raise their heads. After this, Iris reveals that she saw Lythe's abilities during the exam and personally recruited him for the Royal Guards, since she knew the Wellesley name sounded familiar. So, Iris reveals that she checked the Court Personnel Bureau and found out that Ride expelled him. Hearing this, Ride explains that the class given by the gods is absolute, and adds that as a holy knight who has served in the Eastern Knightly Order for many years, he knows classes have ranks where holy knights are high class, mages and fighters and mid-class, while peasants and merchants are low class. Ride then further explains that being granted a high class means being recognized by the gods, and the dueling tourney is a stage prepared for such elites. After Ride states that he doesn't know what she saw in Lythe to recruit him, he adds that Lythe wasn't given any class by the gods because he's as good as abandoned by them. Hearing this, Lythe gets sad, and Sarah worries for him and wonders what she could do to help. Just then, Iris points out that Ride might be correct, but also adds that she believes every citizen uses their unique skills to support each other, and classes have nothing to do with it. Afterwards, Iris reveals that she was nearly assassinated, but Lythe bravely confronted the assassin and saved her life. She then comments that the desire to protect people isn't from an oracle. Ride then asks if she intends to defy the will of the gods, and Iris responds by saying she has a suggestion. Some moments later, Melly announces that the priest has completed the repairs of the arena and announces that there's more entertainment to come. Suddenly, she announces that the next contestant is a warrior with unparalleled power and explosive seed who has been blessed with celestial powers by the gods. However, before she names him, Kite jumps out and makes an explosive entrance while stunning Mellys, who then introduces him as a holy knight. While the crowd cheered on, Mellys decides to announce his opponent. A few moments earlier, Iris had suggested they let Lythe prove his abilities in the arena, surprising everyone as she suggested they make the brothers fight in the tourney. Iris had stated that if Kite defeats Lythe, he'll be promoted to the 7th. When Iris points out that there won't be any problem since the match will be viewed by many spectators, Ride figures it's all he wants for Kite, but worries that Iris must be confident to suggest that. However, Kite accepts the offer without thinking, and Ride tells him not to lose the match. In response, Kite says he can't lose to a jobless nobody and vows to show Lythe the power of a holy knight. In the arena, Mellys introduces Lythe as an opponent whose skill was recognized by royalty and is the youngest to join the Royal Guards. However, when she announces that his class is jobless, everyone wonders if she's mistaken. The moment Lythe steps into the arena, the heroes wonder how such a thing is possible, and the agitated crowd hurled stones at Lythe, telling him to get out. Mellys then tries to calm them down while Kite enjoys the view. Some moments later, Kite tells Mellys to ignore Lythe and announces the start of the march, so Mellys announces the beginning of the second match. Suddenly, they both draw their swords and Kite attacks with a celestial boost, hopping to finish Lythe in an instant. While the audience wonders how Lythe would counter the attack, Kite attacks again with his celestial blade, shocking Lythe as the explosive attack rocks the arena. Just when Kite thinks he is eaten, Lythe shows up behind him and subdues him with a knife to his neck. When Melly comments that Kite has been rendered immobile, Lythe lets him go while Kite wonders what just happened. After this, Lythe lets him go and walks off the arena while Mellys announces that Kite has fallen. While they wonder what happened in an instant, points out in the stands that Lythe has improved. Iris then asks if he's aware of the celestial blade skill of the Holy Knight. In response, says that the celestial blade concentrates the power at the tip of the blade and then explosively releases the magical power at once. In addition to this, explains that it's a Holy Knight's ultimate move, which can become powerless if the target gets within its range before it explodes. A few moments before then, Lythe had gotten close to Kite and blocked the attack with his sword, before stylishly taking Kite down in an instant and subduing him with his sword. Urs then points out that Lythe completely sees through Kite's attacks, impressing Iris, who then believes in Lythe to prove his strength. Afterwards, Kite sits up, wondering if he's in a nightmare, and Melis asks him if he can continue the duel. In response, he quickly gets on his feet and says he just slipped a little. After claiming there's no way he'll lose to a Lythe, the crowd points out that Lythe is surprisingly strong. Just then, the fight resumes with Kite attacking and Lythe defending while the heroes comment on how cool it is to see a jobless guy dominate a holy knight in the arena. However, it wasn't a pleasant sight for Ride, who then figures he made a wrong choice, having Kite battle Lythe in front of an audience, since Lythe has nothing to lose, unlike Kite, who would be recognized as an inferior opponent to a jobless guy. Just when he realizes they'd lose either way, Ride figures he has been played by Iris. Meanwhile, in the arena, the battle gets more intense with Kite desperately trying to redeem himself in the face of the audience. Suddenly, Lythe makes him trip, and he literally bites the dust again. Infuriated by this, Kite uses his Celestial Blade skill again, and figures it's useless since Lythe suddenly shows up behind him and lands a kick on him, which throws him out of the ring. Just then, Meli announces that Kite will be disqualified if he doesn't return in 10 seconds, so the countdown begins while Julius keeps fiddling with his Rubik's Cube and enjoys the match. Just then, he comments that Kite's abilities should have been superior since he's a holy knight, but he's getting overwhelmed by the classless Lythe. Just when Julius thinks Lythe is getting more interesting, Kite gets back in the arena, panting, and immediately attacks Lythe, who was backing him. However, when Lythe dodges the attack, Kite screams, saying he's the strongest. Lythe then shuts him up with a scissors kick to the head, and Kite falls face down like he's got some slime kicks on. Seeing this, the crowd was amazed, so Kite turned to Lythe, wondering how that happened. So Lythe tells him to give up and flashes back to a childhood memory of him and Kite. Some years ago, while visiting the 4th District, Lythe got some freshly baked bread, and the seller warned him to be careful since he looked new and added that the town is full of thieves. Just when he tries to hand over the bread, a thief snatches it and dashes off. However, the stall owner refuses to hand back the payment. Since the 4th District is a populated slum inhabited by those who were assigned a lower class by the gods, the people lacked opportunities for jobs, so they resorted to a life of crime to survive. After Kite escapes with the stolen bread, he sits somewhere and feasts on his loot. Just then, Lythe finds him and tells him not to eat so quickly. When Lythe advises him to quit stealing, Kite gets furious and tries to kick him, but Lythe blocks the hit and sends Kite tumbling to the floor. So Lythe tells him that he could have asked if he wanted more food, but when he turned to leave, Kite tells him to wait and asks if he could teach him the technique he used on him. A few moments later, they sat near a lake and hurled stones into the water while Kite talked about how hard it is to live in the town. Lythe then asked Kite why he thinks he would help him, and Kite explained that he needed cool moves to survive and pointed out that Lythe could have called an adult to catch him but forgave him instead. When he added that he'd like to become strong like Lythe thought about it for a bit and agreed to teach him. He then told Kite not to give up halfway, and they introduced themselves. Shortly after this, they began their training by running, but since Kite couldn't keep up, he told Lythe to wait. When he asked Lythe why he's running so much, Lythe explained that he needs stamina and breath control to beat an opponent. Afterwards, they trained by sparring with sticks, and Kite knocks Kite over. He then tells Kite that he'll get done in by his opponent if he lets his guard down. He then suggested they take a short break and shared his bread with Kite. While they ate, Kite said he was tired and didn't feel like eating, but Lythe warned him that he would lose stamina if he didn't eat. Just then, Kite asks Lythe if he's a noble, and when he confirms this, Kite points out that Lythe can live in luxury without having to train hard. However, Lythe explains that his father is a strong combat class, so he had to become strong to be recognized by him. Hearing this, Kite said it must feel nice for his father to have high hopes for him, so Lythe asked if it's the same for Kite, but Kite reveals that his father only shows up occasionally. Suddenly, Kite remembered that it's his mom's birthday and figures his dad must be coming too. So he invites Lythe to his house to have some food together. A few moments later, they arrive at Kite's house with a cake, and Kite thanks Lythe for paying for it. On entering the house, Kite announces that he brought a friend and a cake, and his mom responds, saying his day has just arrived, too. On meeting Kite's dad, Lythe was surprised to meet Ride, his father, sitting at the table. While Kite wonders what was wrong, Lythe asks Ride why he's there. After a moment of awkward silence, Kite's mother asks Ride why the boy is calling him father, but he shuts her up, and she falls to the ground while Kite tends to her. Just then, Ride asks Lythe why he thinks he became a noble, and Lythe responds, saying it's because he possesses the strength of a knight. Hearing this, Ride commends his response and points out that he has always aimed for the position that could have been taken away from him if he lacked strength. Just then, Ride adds that he was able to rise to the position of Duke in a single generation, and he needed a successor to protect the position. After this, Ride states that the candidate for the position is Lythe. but adds that if he's unable to get a high class during class distribution, the Duke's household might lose the title. So Ride reveals that it's why a plan B was needed. He then informs Kite that he's the second candidate and explains that he wasn't planning on telling Lythe before the class distribution, but he ended up finding out. After Ride told both boys not to disappoint him and left, he never returned to visit Kite and his mother. So Kite blames Lythe for this, and as the duel resumes, he intensifies his attacks while saying that Ride used him and his mom to protect his power. To make matters worse, Kite points out that it pisses him off to know that he's just a replacement. So Kite reveals that he was happy when Lythe got the jobless class, and he, on the other hand, got recognized by their father. As the fight progresses with Kite attacking and Lythe evading the attacks, Lythe responds by saying that although he wasn't able to receive a class, classes are not absolute. Suddenly, Kite fires off a celestial blade attack, and Lythe points out that using the same technique won't change a thing. However, Kite says he knows that, and adds that he's aiming for Melis, who is standing behind Lythe. Kite then asks Lythe why he'll do, since he always rushes in to save someone in trouble, and also once forgave him for stealing his bread. In a split second, Lythe thinks and pulls a trick which deflects the attack and saves Melis in the process. Shocked by this, Kite realizes that Lythe wrapped the energy of the celestial blade around his sword and used it to slice through his attack. Suddenly, Kite gets hit by the deflected attack, and to everyone's surprise, he gets blown out of the ring for the umpteenth time. When he crash lands outside the ring, Melis announces this, and the countdown begins. Meanwhile, in the stands, figures that Lythe must have put the magic attack to practical use. When Iris asks what he means, explains that the celestial blade normally disperses the power of light, but Lythe reversed it and uses his sword to slash through it. While the countdown continues, points out that Lythe's ability to manipulate magical power freely is a privilege of the mage class. In addition to this, explains that since Lythe is bound by no class, he'll continue to grow stronger. After the countdown finishes, Melis announces that Kite hasn't returned to the arena and announces Lythe as the winner. While Ride feels bad about his loss, Julius congratulates Lythe and introduces himself to him. After this, he comments that he enjoyed watching the match and points out that Lythe must have some hidden skills since he used a Holy Knight skill. When he asks if he's right, Lythe keeps mute, so Julius invites him to go outside and talk. Meanwhile, the audience can't stop talking about how amazing the jobless Lythe is. Afterwards, Kite gets furious, asking himself why a jobless has such powers. While he figures it should be impossible, Kite concludes he needs more power. Just then, an ambitious idiot approaches Kite with a sword and says the match isn't over yet. Suddenly, Kite squashes his head into a wall and vows to remember his defeat and go all out when next they meet. Meanwhile, outside the tourney, Lythe asks Julius what he wants to talk about, and Julius suddenly summons a huge fireball. Immediately, Lythe uses his fireball skill and quells the ball of fire while Julius gives him applause. After this, he points out that Lythe must be hiding other skills too, and asks how he could do that as a jobless. In addition to this, Julius reveals his desire to fight against someone strong and says he's looking forward to fighting against Lythe. Suddenly, he pulls a fire trick and vanishes into the forest. Back in the arena, the match continues as Claire, a white mage, battles against another participant named Fang, who didn't flinch after being hit by Claire's attacks. When Melis announces that Claire's effects have no effects, Claire prepares to attack again, but Fang appears behind her and tells her to look properly before attacking. Immediately, Claire fires an air explosion spell at him, but only his cloak gets burned. So Fang explains that there's a secret behind the cloak and asks Claire if she knows it. While the ladies drool at his handsome looks, Claire wonders if the cloak is absorbing her attacks. Just then, Fang reveals that his skill is damage absorption. However, he soon makes her realize he only read her mind and reveals that his true skill is dark shadow. Suddenly, Claire gets engulfed in darkness with some weird eyes staring at her. Meanwhile, in the arena, Claire had vanished, surprising the audience, so Fang informs Melis that Claire is out of bounds and suggests the countdown begins. So the countdown began, and Lythe was declared the winner of the match. After this, Fang flicks his finger, and Claire immediately gets released from the spell. When Melis freaks out, Fang says she's just unconscious and points out that he won't spare any life on a battlefield. In addition to this, Fang crushes the protection ring and says that he doesn't need it in combat, so the audience cheered. Afterwards, Melis announces that the final battle is between Gu, a martial artist, and his opponent, Julius, a sage. However, since Julius doesn't show up, Melis decides to confirm if she was right. Just when Gu says that Julius must be scared, Julia apologizes for keeping them waiting and shatters the protective barrier while floating into the arena. When he landed, the audience couldn't believe he had shattered the highest level of magical barrier so casually. Meanwhile, in the stands, Rigel comments that Gu is the top martial fighter of his knightly order and predicts that he'll make the first win for them. However, to his dismay, Julius roasts Gu within seconds with a fiery twister, and Melis announces that the match is over. Just then, Ralph asks Julius where he went, and he responds, saying he was just playing around with a rare toy he'd just found. After this, Julius comments that there will be another interesting match soon with Lithe. Afterwards, Mellies announces that the battle between the last participants was inspiring and reveals that the semi-final participants are now all set. Just then, the match fixtures were displayed on a holographic screen, and Mellies announced the upcoming matches for the following week. Just when she's about to announce that Richard might be present, the arena gets covered with a shadow, so Mellies looks up and spots an ancient dragon trying to land in the arena. Rattled by this, the audience gets out of their seats, but Mellies tells everyone to remain calm. Seeing this, Iris calls out to Richard and comments that his entrance is too flashy. Just then, Richard gets off the dragon and apologizes for being too conspicuous. At that moment, Mellie announces the arrival of Richard while the crowd cheered. Meanwhile, the heroes observe the glowing flame dragon, which is said to inhabit the dark continent since ancient times. Known for being ferocious and powerful, its existence is shrouded in mystery. While they wonder how he tamed such a beast, Ralph figures the dragon must have recognized Richard's strength. Just then, Richard borrowed the microphone from Mellies and thanked her before asking everyone what strength means. Suddenly, Richard explains that the participants of the dueling event are excellent warriors and are not just strong because of their classes. He then gives a TED talk on how efforts can complement skills. Hearing this, Iris wonders what's gotten into Richard, while he goes on lecturing the audience on how experiences of frustration can prove useful. After charging the audience to challenge themselves and challenging them to use their inner strength, the crowd cheers like it's all they need to make it big in life. However, since Iris is unimpressed, comments that Richard sometimes says things befitting a king. After this, Richard pets the dragon and announces that the winner's knightly order will receive the rights to visit the dragon village where the ancient dragon lives. After this, the king takes off on his dragon while the crowd screams, asking for more information. Hearing this, ponders it, while Iris wonders why Richard showed up. Then chips in that Richard must have some plan in mind. After this announcement, every participant continued to refine their skills in training. Just then at the Royal Guard's training, Lithe shows up and says he knew he'd come. Later, James, a top official of the Eastern Knightly Order, invites Julius to a meeting, and he asks if it's another boring one. However, James tells him to quit complaining and get in. On entering the room, they realize everyone is seated, so Ride says he doesn't want to see James' face, but Ralph tells him to quit snapping at him. Just then, the meeting commences and James announces that the Eastern Knightly Order's plan is coming to a head. He then reveals their plans to have the king dead and explains that the plan has progressed smoothly. After this, he states that they're ready to move at any moment and chips in that kite's escape was unexpected, but it's fine. James then announces that the biggest obstacle to the plan is the king himself, since he holds overwhelming power. To explain further, James says that as long as Richard has the glowing flame dragon, they can't even scratch him, since the dragon has fought with Richard and has become his sworn ally. Because of this, James points out that Richard is invincible and their army might not stand a chance against the duel. Ralph then asks if there's nothing that can be done, but Camilla, the second princess, shows up and says she's come up with a plan. Shortly after, James offers her his seat while Camilla says there's no need to call her princess, since she's only Iris's sidekick. When asked about the strategy, Camilla explains it to them, and Ralph comments that he's worried about its feasibility. Suddenly, Ride gets up and approaches Camilla, who then asks if something is up. Ride then stabs Camilla's belly, surprising her guard, who then asks if he's gone nuts. However, the guard bleeds instead and collapses. Just then, Ride points out that any uncertainties have been removed, and Camilla pulls out the knife like it's nothing while asking if there are any other flaws in her strategy. However, the committee agrees there are none, so she gets excited in anticipation of the next dueling event. Finally, the day of the event arrives, and Mellies does her introductions by talking about the venue. Excited, the audience went wild in anticipation of the battles. Just then, Rigel walks in, saying his knightly order might have lost all matches, but can gain experience for future missions. Meanwhile, the audience roasts Morris for losing to his crush. At the same time, Leona tells Claire to pay attention to the match since it might prove useful in the future, while Ride worries about Kite's disappearance. Afterwards, Mellies introduces Iris and Camilla while they waved at the crowd, who then cheered for them. While faking smiles, Iris and Camilla exchange some awkward pleasantries, and Iris points out that Richard always worries about her and would like to see her at court, but Camilla says there won't be any opportunity for that anymore. Suddenly, Richard walks in as Mellies introduces him, and the crowd shows their love for him. After this, Mellies introduces the participants of the semifinals and reveals that Sarah will be going up against Julius, while Fang will be going up against Lithe. Seeing Lithe covered in injuries, Mellies wonders if he was busy during the week, and Julius comments that he looks forward to his next match. Just then, Sarah tells Julius that he won't make it to the finals, surprising him. So Julius asks what she means by that, and Sarah explains that she's obviously going to defeat him. Suddenly, a fierce gust of wind blows and a twister appears around Julius, so Julius says it'll be fun playing with a cute little doll like Sarah. A few moments later, the match begins, and Sarah charges towards Julius, who then prepares to roast her, but to his surprise, Sarah lands a hit on him and cuts through him like butter. However, to her surprise, the cuts vanish and Julius appears behind her. He then tells her it's just an afterimage and tries to attack Sarah from behind. This then results in an explosion, making Julius think he cooked, and Melis announces that it's a direct hit on Sarah. However, Sarah bursts out of the flames, defending the attack with her celestial blade. Seeing this, Julius is impressed, so he realizes he's up for more fun and activates his Rubik's Cube's magic. Suddenly, he hurls some jagged stone javelins at Sarah, while Melis comments that Julius is a man of multiple magic attributes. Luckily, Sarah evades the stone javelins and shatters them with her celestial blade. However, to her surprise, Julius wasn't done yet, so he flicked his Rubik's Cube and cast another spell which hits Sarah midair as she wonders why her celestial blade won't work. Some time ago, Julius once consulted a craftsman and asked him about some crystals with magical attributes. In response, the craftsman explains what they are and reveals that there are others with different attributes. So, Julius requests that he make something fun using the crystals. While the craftsman wonders what he means, Julius explains that it has to be something useful while playing and hands the craftsman a blueprint. Back in the arena, the craftsman points out that Julius doesn't care if he wins or loses as long as he has fun. Just then, Julius flicks his cube again and casts another spell, which unleashes flames on Sarah. While he keeps messing around with her, the audience comments that no one could win against a master of all elements like Julius. However, Sarah stands her ground and keeps attacking, but Julius suddenly shows up behind her and tries to hit her with a flaming hand. He then hesitates and asks Sarah where all her vigor went, but Sarah responds, saying he's out of luck since he has lost his only chance to beat her. While Iris watches from the stands, rooting for Sarah, Sarah makes her sword float and clones 6 copies of the sword. She then says they're all real celestial blades and aims them all at Julius. Seeing this, Julius realizes his opponent has grown stronger, so he comments on how fun the duel has been. Ignoring this, Sarah attacks while Julius wonders what she's up to, so he flicks his cube and raises a clay wall in defense. However, Sarah activates a new skill that bores through the wall with her cloned swords rotating at high speed. Intrigued by this, Julius summons a flare tornado and repels Sarah's attack. Despite this, she attacks again and activates a chaotic petal dance skill, which boosts Sarah. Suddenly, Julius vanishes and Melis comments that he's nowhere to be found. After this, he randomly appears behind Sarah and comments that she lost one of her swords to launch the attack. After saying he'd like to see more adorable moves, Julius flicks his cube while saying he's still got lots of skills up his sleeve. Just then, he begins some weird stone magic and announces that they're starting round 2. Seeing this, Sarah figures he must be messing with her while the audience wonders what trick Julius is pulling this time. After this, Julius snaps his finger, and a golem emerges from the ground. Unfazed by this, Sarah stands her ground while the audience marveled at the sight of the giant monster. While the golem towers high before Sarah, Melis hypes the golem in her commentary, while Julius feels proud of himself. A few moments later, the golem picks up a giant stone and hurls it towards Sarah, but she evades it while Ride comments on the incredibly powerful and slow nature of golems. Without wasting time, Sarah leaps in the air and takes a few sword swings at the golem, making it shatter. Surprised, Melis commends her bravery in the commentary, and the audience realizes Sarah has the upper hand. Meanwhile, Julius watches, speechless for a bit, so Saraha asks why he's fighting using a golem. When she approaches him, Julius asks if she knows the legend of the Flame Titan. But since Sarah stares at him cluelessly, Julius narrates that a Flame Titan once existed in ancient times who burned through human cities and brought suffering to the people. After a while, it became the symbol of the very end, so Julius reveals that he has always admired the Flame Titan. Unimpressed, Sarah asks what that has to do with anything, so Julius says that his desire to create the monster pushed him to explore. While he casts the spell, Julius reveals that he needed earth magic and fire magic combined. So he finishes the spell and the Flame Titan suddenly bursts out of the ground. Suddenly, the Flame Titan hurls flames at Sarah, but she dodges the attacks, wondering why it's so strong. While the audience watches in horror, Sarah struggles against the Flame Titan, who then launches a ball of fire at her. Seeing this, Melis flees the arena and announces that Julius has summoned a mythical creature like never seen before. Seeing this, Morris comments that he has never heard of someone able to use magic with 2 attributes at the same time. Meanwhile, Julius feels proud of his achievement and announces that he's not done yet, so Sarah attacks the Flame Titan and lands a direct hit, but gets knocked to the ground in the process. Suddenly, the Flame Titan acts strangely and begins to repair the damage caused while Julius flaunts his creation. After this, he launches a stone lance at Sarah, and just when she defends herself, the flame titan picks her up and locks her within its grip. While she screams, Lythe tells her to surrender since she might die if she continues. However, Sarah refuses to back out since she wants to join the Royal Guard. Meanwhile, Julius tells her to stay focused and tries to get rid of her, but one of Sarah's comrades threatens him with a sword and says that playtime is over. Do you think Lythe has what it takes to go up against Julius the Lunatic? Let's know what you think in the comments. If you want more videos like this, comment and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.